Thank you guys so much. This is very cool to see so many people. We've never had a training session this successful and socially distanced at that. It's great. Very cool. So I am Julie Lynn Zahavich, and I used to work for Island Nature Trust. Now I work for the province. And there was no begging or pleading. I happily came back to do this training because I really like working with volunteers, especially our conservation guardians. So yeah, thanks so much for being here. This is like an in-class session sort of thing. And then like Megan said, the next step is to choose a natural area and then meet with either Amy or Megan at one of the properties and get familiar with the property that properties that you're going to be managing. So for this in-class session, normally I would do a PowerPoint, but I can't. So I'm going to look at the PowerPoint and just sort of relay the facts to you guys. And so for this presentation, I'm really hoping that you'll come away with more of an understanding of what Island Nature Trust does, an idea of where our natural areas are across the island. Hoping to give you some information about the roles and responsibilities of the conservation guardians, and to provide some tips on how to get you started. So if there's any questions along the way, feel free to raise your hand or shout out. You can grab some food. The washrooms are inside, and anyone will show you where they are. So with that, I think we'll dive in. So Island Nature Trust was founded in 1979. Yes, last year was our 40th anniversary. Pretty exciting. We currently, or I keep saying Island Nature Trust owns or leases over 5,000 acres in 55 distinct natural areas across the province. So quite a lot of land. The Nature Trust vision is a network of protected, robust natural areas that are championed by knowledgeable, engaged islanders like yourselves. So Island Nature Trust natural areas, they comprise nearshore islands, hardwoods, softwood, mixed wood forests, wetlands, salt marshes, bogs, and coastal shores as well. So I'm going to take you on a whirlwind tour of Island Nature Trust natural areas. So they stretch all the way up here to Nail Pond, where we have the Charles Dalton natural area. Then we have Foley's Pond natural area, Kildare Forest natural area, which is one of our few natural areas that has a trail in it, which is great. We have Trout River natural area in here, the Acadian Marshes natural area in Alaska, the Portage Bog natural area, and the adjacent Ivans Branch Portage Bog natural area, which is a new one for us, I think. There's a Freeland natural area that's in here, Mount Pleasant Woodland natural area, also in here, in Freeland. We have a Robert Arsenault natural area, which is down here in Abrams Village. We have a few island natural areas, which is kind of cool. We've got Bird Island in Malpeque Bay, Corton Island also in Malpeque Bay, and the Holland natural area, or Little Corton Island natural area, also in Malpeque Bay. Back on the land, we've got, it's all land, but back on the main land of PEI, Joyce Gadet, or Goody Muscush Bog natural area, which is a little tiny bog that's landlocked, surrounded by more bog. We have the Malpeque Bay Salt Marsh Natural Area, which is in Sherbrooke, and there's two parts to it, Loch Shore and Gunning Shore. We have Sea Cow Head and Salutation Cove Natural Area down here in Fernwood. We have Indian River, that's not ours, the Sinclair and Joyce McKay Natural Area in Indian River. Princetown Point, which is up here near Cabot Park, which is a grassland natural area. It's kind of a new thing for us. Most of our natural areas are like forest or wetland, something that we can kind of walk away from, or not walk away, but more passively manage, whereas the Princetown grasslands will be managed as a grassland for grassland nesting birds. So that's up here near Cabot Park. And then we have the Douglas Natural Area, which is in Norborough. It's quite small. So those are all of our Prince County ones. That's one county. So we have quite a few natural areas. We're going to go to Queens County, where we have the Long River Riparian Zone Natural Area. Up here in Long River, we have the Barber Green Natural Area down here in Tryon, which is actually in Prince County, but I've lumped it in with the Queens County ones for convenience. Dunk River Hardwoods is in here. Natural area. Malcolm MacArthur, which is on the Peters Road near Bonshaw. The St. Peter's Island Natural Area, another one that we often do like a yearly trip to across the Sand Flats. Not sure if that'll happen this year with COVID-19. Oh, it will. Okay. Interesting. Nice. Great. The Honorable Lloyd G. MacPhail Natural Area is in South Milton. The Crown Point, which I'm sure you guys heard about on our social media, natural area is, I feel like I'm just pointing at this map, which is over here somewhere, in Crown Point in Alexandra. The Conic Woodland Natural Area is in Frenchfort, again. Duroche Pond Natural Area, which is in up near Blooming Point. Just below it on the Afton Road is our Blooming Point Natural Area. The Hennessy Farm Woodland Natural Area is in Fort Augustus across the bridge. Jenkins Complex, which is our largest natural area, which is over 600 acres. It's in Mount Albion. It's also one of our natural areas that has trails on it, so quite publicly accessible. It's over here. The Knifer Natural Area is on either side of Point Prim. It's kind of got two parts to it. The Wendell M. Prophet Natural Area is along the Pinette River. Beautiful spot. The Newtown Cross Hardwood Feral Forested Natural Area, it's a mouthful, is in Iona over here. And then we have just across the road, there's a tiny little spot. It's called the Iona Natural Area. It's quite small. And then along the Selkirk Road, we have two, they're called Culloden and Culloden North Natural Areas. Down in Wood Islands, we have the Alice Margaret McMillan Woodlands Natural Area. And then, straddling the border of Queens and Kings County, we have the Caledonia Forest Woodland Natural Area. And we have one more county to go. So we have a ton of natural areas. And they're quite spread out. So we're not quite at our connected network of natural areas yet, but the more we gather, and of course there's other natural areas connected in as well. So we're building on that connectivity. So Kings County, we have Canavoy Oaks Natural Area up here in Canavoy along the coast. The Bristol Creek Natural Area, which goes along Bristol Creek near Morel. The Barbara P. Parsons Natural Area, which is in Bangor. We have the Morel River Riparian Zone Natural Area just down the road from the Barbara Parsons. We have the McKinnon's Bog Natural Area, which is over in Coraville. It's kind of in two parts. It's a boggy property. We have two more islands out in Murray Harbor. We've got Gordon's Island and Herring Island, which we usually do a cleanup with NCC every summer. Not sure if that'll happen with COVID-19. Maybe, we'll see. Let's see, we have two natural areas in Brudenell, the McGowan Riparian Zone Woodland Natural Area and the Wellspring of Peace Natural Area, both side by side basically in Brudenell. The Hessian Farm 1810 Woodland Natural Area out here in Georgetown. The Perrette McKinnon Woodlands Natural Area up here in Cable Head. Let's see, the George Seville Woodland Natural Area in St. Charles up here. I think that's where St. Charles is. Anyway, Townsend Woodlot Natural Area is up here. It's got some of our oldest forest in PEI. It's a beautiful spot. Right underneath it is Charnwood Natural Area, another great spot for old forest. And finally, the North Lake Natural Area in North Lake. So those are all of our natural areas. I mean, they span from North Lake over to Nail Pond, down to Wood Islands in Alaska. So wherever you are in PEI, there is a natural area for you. Was the point of walking you through this. So, and just to really show you the span that we've got here. We're covering lots of nearshore islands, coastal areas, and building on the connectivity of other natural areas as well. So now that you know where all of our natural areas are, I'm going to just give you some information about how we acquire land and how we protect it. So we kind of manage our land as a team, and we've got kind of various levels. So the first, it starts with acquiring the property, and that's mostly done by Megan, our executive director. So she addresses any legal issues, goes through the whole acquisition process, which is kind of painful at times. She'll attest to that. And she also supervises the staff here at the Stewardship Technician and oversees the stewardship programs. There's a land management committee, which is made up of Isle Trust staff and also Isle Trust board members. There's also a few knowledgeable volunteers that sit on that committee as well, and they advise and approve stewardship and management plans for the property. So they're kind of like higher level overseeing things and approving things. Then we have our stewardship team, including our stewardship technician, Amy. And Amy carries out the day-to-day activities for stewardship, so she might be tree planting one day or pulling invasive species another, organizing events, things like that. And she's also your main contact as a conservation guardian, her and Megan. So she'll be the person that you're talking to most of the time. And then, of course, and last but definitely not least, there is the conservation guardians. And you guys are the eyes and ears on the ground in our natural areas across the island. So we have a very small staff, small team, so we really rely pretty heavily on our volunteers to know what's going on in our natural areas and get your reports back to us. So that's a very important part of this whole thing. So in terms of how we protect land, like I said, first we have to acquire the land, and that's mostly Megan working on that. So whenever we're thinking about acquiring land, we'll develop a baseline documentation report, which basically just outlines the condition of the land and the natural features when we get it, so that we can basically have a baseline to compare to in the future, so we can monitor changes and things like that. Then there's a legal designation. So all of our natural areas are protected under the PEI Natural Areas Protection Act, which is a piece of provincial legislation that you can put on a deed of a property. It stipulates what you can and can't do, and it includes a binding management plan that we legally need to carry out. So NAPA designation actually carries with a property. So if we were ever to sell a property, which we would likely never do, that protection would carry with that deed. So it's a great way to protect land and PEI for the long term. Once we have acquired and protected the natural area, then we start monitoring it. So we'll go out at least once a year, staff will, but often we're out more than that during the summer and the winter months as well. And so we're looking at land use changes, either in the natural area or in the surrounding area. We're looking for human disturbances or potential threats to the natural area as well. We might do some restoration, so that might include tree planting, removing invasive species. So we basically do restoration when the ecological integrity of an area has been compromised, and we need to do some work to get it back to its original state. So sometimes we'll do things like that as well. Our approach to stewardship, we really strive to, particularly with donated land, if a donor has a long-term vision for a property, we try our best to carry that out. So that's primarily what we do. We try to respect the wishes of landowners and their vision for the natural area. We protect the natural ecosystems and their functions within the natural area. We restore lands that have been impacted by human use. So, for example, invasive species, we might remove those and replant some native plants. Or sometimes we'll plant shrubs or trees to try to increase biodiversity within a natural area. And we also engage community members like yourselves as champions of our lands. We try to also incorporate the principle of natukalimk, and I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly. It's a Mi'kmaq word, and it means to be spiritually and physically nourished by the land, while also working to protect it so that it may provide for future generations. So through this principle, everything is interconnected, and any changes must be made with the surrounding environment in mind. So we do try to include that in our management approach. So we do try to make any management decisions thinking about the whole landscape and how it will affect, our neighboring properties, while also thinking about our own natural areas. So I've already mentioned a few of the management activities we do, but here's a few more. So we might do some forest diversification, like I said. Sometimes we'll acquire lands and they're old field white spruce. So, if land has been plowed and it's left to grow up on its own, often it'll be like a single species stand. So we call it old field white spruce. So it's just flat land that's been plowed, and there's only white spruce growing. So often we'll try to diversify those stands by planting native trees and shrubs. We also do a bit of trail building and maintenance. I mentioned a few of our natural areas have trails. I think there's 5 of them altogether that have trails. So, out of 55, we have 5 that have those trails on them. All of our natural areas are open to the public, but trail building is not something we make a habit of. It's expensive, and it can really open a property up to human use and abuse, I would say. So increased vandalism and things like that, vehicle use. We'll also do some invasive species management. So we have certain sites that we go to year after year, like Durash Pond. We often go and do a purple loosestrife pull. And I can't go through all the sites that have invasive species on them. It's a long list, but we do that pretty well every year. So that kind of brings us to the program, the Conservation Guardian program. It was started in the 1990s. So it's actually quite a long-running program, although you might not have heard of it in recent years. That's because without sufficient funding, it kind of petered out. That's often the case for programs and NGOs. But in 2016, we received some federal funding, and we were able to kickstart it again. So we reestablished the program, and now we have a network of about 30 folks across the island who are monitoring our properties and reporting back to us. So that's pretty great. Because our conservation guardians, they really do invaluable work for us. Like we said, we're a small team, so having folks out there monitoring and reporting back to us is very, very important for our work. And also, we like to think that it's kind of fun for you guys. You get to get outside, maybe meet some new people. We hope that you learn a little bit more about our island and the species that call it home through this work. And we try to offer training activities as well, so keep that in mind. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Any questions yet? No? Raise your hand if you have any. So the responsibilities of conservation guardians, basically, so this manual is a great overview of the program, and I'm basically going through it. That's why you've got it with you. I'm going through it right now. So reading and understanding the manual is a great place to start. There's some stewardship policies and procedures in there that you should try to familiarize yourself with. So that's number one responsibility, the manual. The second one is keeping in touch with our stewardship technician, Amy. So it's great if you're going out and monitoring and taking notes, but it's even better, in fact, ideal, if you send those notes back to us so we know what's going on. And also keeping track of your time. So in the NGO world, we often have to get in-kind contributions to match the funds that we've got to run our programs. So keeping track of your volunteer hours is really helpful for us because we can say, well, we've had this many volunteer hours contributed to this project. We can kind of use that as leverage to get more funds for our work. So that's really important. And I always tell volunteers, I don't know about you, Amy, but we have an online form that you can fill out, and Amy will circulate that. But I would take your information in any form. If you want to send me an email, or send Amy an email, or a call, as long as we get the information, it doesn't really matter to us what form it comes in. Next responsibility is just to represent INT in all of the facets of your work in the stewardship and the public events. You're really the face of Island Nature Trust when you're out there in the natural areas, and it's nice to be a friendly face and to represent appropriately, I guess. And so with experience, conservation guardians sometimes are asked to do other kind of maintenance work. Mike back there has helped us put up signs. Nancy's gone out and cleaned up some of our trails, which is great. And sometimes they'll recruit new volunteers. So with time and experience, we might ask you to do some of these extra things if you're up for it. As a general code of conduct, like I said, we always want you to act as a positive ambassador for Island Nature Trust and to never do anything to put the credibility of Island Nature Trust at risk. You guys all seem like very trustworthy people. I'm sure I don't have to worry about that. Please don't do anything that would endanger you or anyone else, or Island Nature Trust staff or the public, of course. And we always ask that you treat anyone that you encounter, but Island Nature Trust staff, board of directors, and other volunteers especially, with respect and how you would like to be treated as well. In terms of a time commitment and skills required, we usually ask that you visit the property or properties once a year. But I mean, you can go as often as you'd like. Some folks go once a week, Mike and Louise. Some people go every day. Some people go once a month. So, the more frequent, the better. But once a year is great too, or once a season would be great too. Just kind of depends sometimes on the natural area and how accessible it is, and if you're willing to snowshoe. It's good to be in good physical condition if you're going to be out in the natural area, especially in a more remote natural area. You don't want to get into a situation where you're in the middle of a bog and you have to walk out and, you've had some serious health complications. So it's good to consider that when you're taking on this responsibility. It's good to have good observational skills. So we're really looking for, changes in the natural area, wildlife, plants, human disturbances. So having good observational skills is certainly a plus. You can have some knowledge of local wildlife or plant species. It's not required though. I think you'll probably learn along the way, but that would be great if you do. Map reading and GPS knowledge is useful, but again, it's not required, and we can help you out with that if you need it. And yeah, training is provided, so we can help you with reading maps or using a GPS. And we also do like to provide some training, more regular, like classroom training as well to our volunteers. So that's kind of everything I have about the program. I have some more stuff about how to actually get started. Does anyone have any questions, though, about the program or time requirements or anything like that? There you go.
I just wondered, do you have guardians for all of those 955 properties now, or are there some you specifically would like to encourage?
That's a good question. We don't have natural areas for all of conservation guardians for all of our natural areas. I think Megan has a list of them. And that being said, though, it's great to have multiple for a natural area too, especially if it's a large natural area or one that has trails, because we do like to keep an eye on those ones a little more. Like I said, they do kind of invite more activity, which is great, but also has some downsides. So we don't have guardians for all of our natural areas. If you want to find out what those natural areas are, I'm sure Megan can help you with that.
I can just add a little tiny bit to that. There's a number of properties that we don't have conservation guardians for, and we do have some new tools that Amy can talk about a little bit at the end that make properties that don't have trails in them a little safer and more accessible for guardians. As long as you have a cell phone, we can give you a map that doesn't require cell coverage to put on your cell phone now. It's a new technology through an app that you download, but the different properties have different needs. Some of the really small ones are some of the ones that are most at risk because they have many edges and lots of activities around them that could impact on the property. Having said that, some of the really large properties are wonderful to walk, and with the new mapping technology that we have, it's a little safer to do so. Yeah, we can go through all of those later on, looking at the map. If there's particular regions that you just love to visit, I'm sure we have a natural area somewhere nearby. So yeah, we can go over that in more detail a little later on. And like I said, phase 2 is always going out to the natural area with our staff.
All right. Okay, so these are just some tips for getting started. So things that I would do if I were going out into the field. So like I said, this is the classroom portion. The next step is to choose a natural area and then meet with either Amy or Megan on site. Usually we'll walk the boundary of a property just to show you the extent of the property, and then we'll do a little wander through the interior to give you a feel for the property. We'll point out some of the features of it. So, if there's a really nice hardwood stand in the back, we'll go back there and show you that. We'll show you access points, so if there's any driveways or roads through it, we would go over that with you. Before your visit, it's good to review the natural area summary. So those are on the website. I don't think all of them are on the website yet. Are they? No, not yet. But you can reach out to Amy or Megan and they will provide that to you. Often we'll give you a species list. So we do collect biological data in all of our properties, and we have compiled lists of everything we've ever found in our natural area. Some of them are quite extensive. So if you're interested in that, we can give you that as well. We can provide a management plan that we've developed for the property so that you can get an idea of what we're dealing with. And you might want to, if you've gone before, you might want to look at your previous visit notes or reports just to see what was up last time so that you might want to follow up on something. It's good to choose a time when natural features are still visible. So like I said, you could go in the winter, but there won't be any migratory birds or blooming plants. So you might want to go in the spring, summer, or early fall. You should keep in mind that there are certain properties that see frequent vandalism and public use. So that is just the the fact of owning land in PEI, these natural areas where there are trails, or like Megan said, they're smaller and they have more edges, those ones you might want to visit more frequently, because we tend to see more issues in those types of natural areas. You want to pack what you need to take note of any disturbances. So often I always bring my cell phone so I can take photos or, make a recording. I always take a notebook as well, if I want to write anything down. And check the weather forecast. If you're going into a giant property, you don't want to get all the way to the back and have it thunderstorm on you. That's not any fun, speaking from experience. So what should you bring? Like I said, I always bring a notepad and a pencil and a camera, although I really just bring my phone nowadays because the phones are so good. The cameras are so good on the phone. I usually bring a GPS unit, but again, phones also have that capability, so GPS may not be needed. A map and a compass if your phone or GPS is not GPS capable. I actually have an app on my phone. It's just a compass app, and that's what I use as a compass now. But you might want an old-fashioned one just in case your phone dies, just to be safe. It's good to take binoculars if you have them, just to check out birds. I like to take a first aid kit. I've been injured in the field before and was very thankful to have it with me, so you might encounter that as well. And any personal items you might need along the way, so hat, bug spray, sunscreen, snacks, water for sure, things like that. Let's see. So when you're monitoring the property, we always will walk the boundary with you. That's a good thing to do every once in a while. I would say at least once a year you want to walk the boundary. That's often where we see disturbances or threats. Some things you might encounter are invasive species. So often our neighboring landowners will dump their garden waste in the woods next door, which sometimes is a natural area, which can be very problematic for us. You might see garbage dumping. I don't understand why that happens, but it happens quite often. And you might see vehicle use as well. So these are all things you would want to take note of. Other things are any plants or animals you see, particularly species at risk. And we do have some training that we can offer you on identifying species at risk in PEI natural areas. You would also want to note any potential threats. So if maybe you see Japanese knotweed, an invasive species, on a property next door, you might want to make note of that. That's kind of like something that you would see off of the natural area that could impact the condition of our natural area. If there are trails, you might want to note the condition of the trail, if there's been any obvious vehicle use on it, if the trail signage is okay or might need to be replaced, or condition of any signage really. And we do have some trail signage here and some natural area signage. So you just want to check on those every time you go to the property, see if they maybe need to be replaced, if they've been vandalized, things like that. You also want to, if you see any disturbances, you want to record them as best you can. So if you only have a notebook, take some detailed notes. If you have a phone or camera, I would take lots of photos. If you have a GPS unit, or you can take a GPS point on your phone, it would be great to take a GPS point as well so we can know exactly where you've observed the disturbance. And as species at risk as well, if you see any of those, it would be great to take a point as well. That's something that we're always tracking in our natural areas. And so we have species at risk: birds, plants, mammals, lichens. So yeah, we definitely want to know about those occurrences in our properties. And like I said, many phones these days do have GPS capabilities, so that is great. And if you need help figuring out how to use your smartphone for that purpose, I'm sure Amy can help you with that too. So, what's next? So I have mentioned a couple times that we offer additional training. So outside of this training session, we've done things like invasive species identification training, species at risk identification, and we're always open to hearing what you guys are interested in. So if you have any particular topics that you'd like to learn more about, or you think something would be useful for your time as a conservation guardian, I'm sure Amy would love to hear about that, and she can try to organize some extra training for you as well. So that's all I've got on the getting prepared to go out. I do have a number of a few helpful apps that I'm just going to mention to you guys that I think might help you in your field work. They certainly help me. And the first one is called Merlin. It's like the wizard, Merlin. And it's a great app for identifying birds. So it's available on Android and iPhone, I think. And basically you can go in and click on Explore Birds, and you can go to various different species, and you can play their call. I actually have it open. And I'm willing to do a demo for anyone who wants to know more about these after the presentation. So you can just basically bring up a bird and play the call. This is a Canada warbler. And it's great because if you think you've seen a Canada warbler and then it flies into the bushes, which 99% of the time it does, if you play their call, sometimes they'll respond and come out, and then you can verify what you've seen. So that's often what we use it for. It's really good. I'll make a note to not play it over and over again, because then you're keeping the bird off of its nest, away from its young, and we don't want to do that. We want to make sure we're protecting the birds, but sometimes you really just want to verify what you've seen. So Merlin is a great app for bird calls, getting to know your bird calls, and playing them out in the field. The next one I really like is called BirdNet. So just bird and then net. It's a new one, and it's only available on Android, but it's really great because we do a lot of auditory birding, so we're listening for birds. And if I hear a bird call and I don't know what it is, I'll get my BirdNet out, and you just hold out your phone and it records for you. And then you can select a certain segment of the recording, and it will analyze that and tell you what bird you've just heard. BirdNet is a great one. I've been using it a lot. There's so many warblers, it's really hard to tell them apart. So it's been really helpful. My favorite app ever is iNaturalist. It's a great one. You can take out your phone, or you don't have to have a phone either. You can take your point and shoot camera, take a photo of something, and go on the website as well, inaturalist.com or org or something like that. And you can upload your photo, and it will ID it for you. The other thing it does is, other botanists or biologists are on there as well, and they can help you ID it. So I always say it's like having a botanist in your pocket, because Sean Blaney at the Atlantic Canada Conservation Data Center is, I think, probably the best botanist in Atlantic Canada, and he's on there, and he IDs stuff. So it's right if Sean has ID'd it for you. And we also, I started this Island Nature Trust Natural Areas iNaturalist project, which I need to figure out if I can hand over to Amy. We'll figure that out. But we do have a project on iNaturalist, so if you join that on iNaturalist, we'll let you in, and you can upload your observations, and it's all compiled in our spreadsheet. And so we would add that to our biological databases. So it's pretty cool to collect information virtually. And then I had Google Maps up here, but it sounds like Amy has a new mapping software. Is it Avenza? So Avenza is a great tool that you can download on your phone, and Amy, I think, can create PDFs with maps on them that you can navigate the natural areas offline, so you don't have to use your data. And you can take photos, and it'll plot your photos on the map. It's a great app, really good one. Okay, those are my apps, and I would love to talk more about iNaturalist if anyone wants to after. I love it. It's the best. I've learned a lot from it too. You see a plant and you don't know what it is, and it'll ID it for you right there on the spot. It's great. Okay, so the next point is safety. Not as exciting. But your safety is our priority. Please don't ever do anything that might put an Island Nature Trust staff or yourself or another volunteer at risk. And the other thing I wanted to talk about were just some things that you might run into if you're out and about in a natural area. Some plants and animals. Ticks, unfortunately. So I just want to talk a little bit about those as my last point. Yeah, I've got a few things to circulate. Maybe I'll just keep a copy of each one. There's only a couple copies of each one. Yeah, the first one I was going to talk about is poison ivy. So I'm sure some of you have encountered this. Sorry, I should have printed off more. Anyway, I'll hold this up. So poison ivy is quite common in PEI. It's often found in coastal areas. I usually find it at the bases of cliffs, sometimes in salt marshes, dry forests. Really, you might find this anywhere, so just be careful. There's a common little phrase, leaves of 3, leave it be. So if you see these 3 leaves, sometimes they're smooth edged, sometimes they're toothed, but they're quite waxy looking. When they're young, they're quite red. And when they're older, later in the season, they'll be dark green. And when they don't have leaves, they often have little white berries along the stem. So this is something that you really want to be careful of, especially if you have a compromised immune system. It can be quite nasty if you've got diabetes or something like that. And so, yeah, if you ever run into this, you want to wash your skin right away with cold water and wash your clothing with hot soapy water. Did you have something to add?
I'm thinking of a bad movie that
Okay.
Never mind.
Well, we can hear that story afterwards. The second one I wanted to just make note of is stinging nettle. Is this in your manual? Okay, great, cool. Oh, I don't even need these. Super. Okay, so stinging nettle is a really interesting plant. It's you can eat it, so it's very nutritious, but it can also sting you. So it's got these bristly hairs on the underside of the leaves and the stem that can be quite a nasty little sting. So it's generally in the understory of wet areas, sometimes in riparian zones along rivers and wetlands, but also in dry meadows. So really, again, just anywhere. Be careful for stinging nettle. The great thing, though, is often its remedy is growing side by side. So spotted jewelweed is a part of the impatiens family. It's a little, it's like really fleshy and watery stem, and it's got a little orange flower. And if you just crush that up and rub it on your stinging nettle sting, it takes away the pain pretty well instantly. And it's great, because they're often just growing right beside each other. Thank you, nature. So if you do get into stinging nettle and you don't find any spotted jewelweed anywhere, you can try some anti-itch creams. That could help too. Good tip. The next one is cow parsnip. And a lot of people confuse this one for giant hogweed. So this is actually a native species. It's not invasive, although it can take over an area pretty well. But it is native. It is much smaller than giant hogweed, so it's quite similar because it has the same sort of umbrella-shaped flower and the same deeply lobed leaves. But the size difference is really the key indicator. So, oh, I'm sorry. So, tether down my papers here. So while giant hogweed will be like 15 feet tall, like really, really tall, this might grow to be 6 feet tall or 8 feet tall. And while the giant hogweed leaves might be the size of this table, the cow parsnip leaves would be half the size of the table. So we do find cow parsnip. It's quite common if you've ever been along the Breadalbin Trail. It's all through there, and I'm sure we've gotten calls before from people thinking it's giant hogweed. I'm sure you have too, Ruth. It's not. It's cow parsnip. We do have some sites with giant hogweed on PEI, so it's very good to be vigilant. But more often than not, it's cow parsnip. But it is really important to stay away from this plant and not really touch it, because giant hogweed, everyone's really scared of it because of the sap can cause photodermatitis, so sensitivity to light. It can cause like 3rd-degree burns if it gets on your skin, and blindness if it gets in your eyes, which I don't know why people say that, but anyway, it's just like to scare you, I guess. But it is quite scary, and this plant does have the same type of sap. It's not as severe a burn as you would get with giant hogweed, but do be careful if you see this plant. Don't break the stem and put the sap on you or anything, because you could have the same sort of reaction, just not as severe. Okay, and the next one is ticks. Ugh, I know, it's so unfortunate they have to talk about ticks, but you have to. So basically, if you're walking along trails and they look like this, like nice shrubby areas or long grass, you could be in tick habitat. Apparently the hot spot in PEI is southeastern PEI. So especially if you're in that area, you just want to take precautions. The best way to avoid getting a tick bite or, maybe Lyme disease, because they can carry that disease, is to cover up your exposed skin. So I know it's really hot right now, but wearing long pants, long sleeves, tucking your socks over your pants, however unfashionable it is a great way to prevent ticks. Also, walking in the middle of trails. If you're walking a trail, I don't really know how well that works, but it's something that folks say to do. Walk in the middle of trails rather at the side or on the edge. And also, it's great to do a good full body check when you get home out of the field, just in case a tick has landed on you or fallen on you. And I've heard if you have a tick on you, you're supposed to, take it off and put it in a little bag and bring it to the provincial lab. I'm sure if you brought it here, though, Megan could could take it there for you. So that is all I have for you today. Like Megan has said, and I've said throughout, the next step really is to decide what natural area you'd like to monitor. Most people choose a natural area that's close to where they live or where their cottage is, or one that they wouldn't mind visiting, once a month or once a year. So you want to choose your natural area and then get in touch with Amy or Megan, and they'll meet you on site and walk you through the property and give you more information, and then you're on your own. You can also call us and get us to walk out with you again, however often as you want, I would think. But yeah, and that's all for me. I'd happily take any questions, unless Megan has something else to say.
I was just going to say too, when management issues are identified, we try our best to try to address them. Sometimes it's not overnight, just because we have a small staff. But we'll try to problem solve through any issues that you might find on properties. Pretty much every back 40 in PEI has an old tractor rotting in the back, or a car body or something like that. It's PEI. But there are other issues that we deal with old dumps and things. Not too often anymore, but there are still some problem areas. So when you see things like that, we'll try to address them as quickly as we can. And there are some advantages to being a charity. There's things that we can get for free that, in terms of assistance, that a regular landowner can't. So we try to take advantage of that as much as possible.